Hey everyone, I realized that I should probably be including the recording date at the beginning of these episodes. Since developments in the AI space tend to happen rapidly, the context we are working with at the time of recording is incredibly important from a listener perspective, and we at Muckrakers want to encourage you to have a critical lens when consuming any media. Speaking of, this episode was recorded on December 8th of 2024, and I didn't get a chance to edit the episode until the 21st. That means that even the very first listeners should take into account that there have been many new developments since recording this. Specifically, OpenAI continued with their 12 days of marketing to release O3 on the final day. Don't take this as any sort of claim we're making about the model. Honestly, I haven't gotten to engage with any material yet myself. But it certainly will be worth discussing in more detail. Now, on to the episode. Welcome to Muckrakers, where we dig through the latest happenings around so-called AI. In each episode, we highlight recent events, contextualize the most important ones, and try to separate muck from meaning. I'm your host, Jacob Hames, and joining me is my co-host, Igor Kravchuk.
Thanks, Jacob. This week, everybody and their monkey decided to drop all of the nice stuff that they had left so people think about them as they go into Christmas. And maybe also as a certain someone is slated to be inaugurated in January and they want to up their bargaining game. So all of the big corporates, Meta, Microsoft, Google, everyone at least teased or dropped new models, and we didn't have time to go through all of them. Also, the Honorable Senator Ted Cruz has launched a very interesting letter in the direction of Merrick Garland that we will also not discuss today, because we're both very busy. I had stuff to do at my day job, and Jacob is going to NeurIPS. So today we just do a close reading of the OpenAI O1 system card, putting that particular release into context afterwards.
Yeah, but we did want to mention one event that we found particularly fun from this past week. So a company called Ultralytics had its flagship product, YOLO 11, hacked, and it would deploy a crypto miner when when used, essentially. And based on single day downloads of their process of from their GitHub repo, the compromised version of YOLO 11 was downloaded probably well over 1 million times. So even though their YOLO stands for you only look once, they're still very much living up to the saying's stupidity. And with that, let's get into papers. Now, not really papers though, system cards. So, Igor, maybe we can start with just if this were a paper, an academic paper, what would your overall approach be? And then we'll we'll contextualize that with how that differs when we're looking at something like a system card.
So what you will find in how to read academic papers guides is look at the abstract, look at the figures, look at the conclusion. And the reason why that is what you kind of can do is that usually in a good paper, the authors are on your side. They're trying to actually convey quite difficult information to you in a clear way, and figures, abstract, conclusion, and maybe the contribution section is where you can get the TLDR, and usually it will be honest. And then the rest of it is kind of additional information. And if you're doing a close read of a paper, you're doing it to really understand it or to find stuff the authors accidentally missed. So if I have my reviewer hat on, in 99% of the times, I don't go in, oh, these guys are trying to fuck me over, or the conference or the journal. It's just oh, they might have missed this thing, or they didn't know this thing existed, and you're the helpful provider.
Mm-hmm.
But this is for academic papers or good technical reports.
Mm-hmm.
And a system card is more on the side of cryptocurrency, white papers, or weak papers where the author needs to make their grant happy, so they need a publication, so they're trying to dress up and polish a turd, basically. And in those papers, you still look at figures, you still look at numbers, but you also now need to very closely look at the prose that you can normally kind of like skip over in a normal paper if you don't want to understand it deeply. Because small throwaway comments or what isn't said can become a lot more important than what actually is displayed or said. So usually stuff like something being pushed to the appendix, or a plot only has a subset of the closest comparisons on there. Those are the things that you need to pay attention to and get into context yourself, because the authors of such junk will not generally. And this is what we're gonna do today.
Yeah. So I guess let's kick us off. And the way that we have this gone through this, we have highlighted basically like things that are sus, things that are worth noting and have extra information, and things that are like, oh, that's a good thing, we're happy that this is happening, or what this implies is happening. And hilariously, the very first sentence is marked as sus. And so that is the O1 model series is trained with large-scale reinforcement learning to reason using chain of thought. And my take here, and I think your take as well, is essentially like they're really wanting to establish that this is different than what has already been put out there. This is a new thing. And so they're starting with introing reasoning for that reason. But we'll see later. It doesn't actually seem like there's much going on here. I mean, that's my take. What do you think, Igor?
Yeah, so like fully agree. Like there is a whole philosophical sidetrack about reasoning, what really is reasoning, and so on. But what we can say is that like test time compute scaling and sampling more was a thing before O1 already.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a nice paper that basically calls out the stochastic monkeys with a typewriter and mentions that like you can just sample more and then aggregate the result either with a like majority vote thing, or just you pick randomly and you improve your chances. So
yeah. And I saw the other day, talking about this specifically, I think it was an article from the Atlantic. I'll find it and make sure it's linked. But the way it discussed this was something like this model is no longer a parrot. It's like a rat running a maze, where it's reasoning, and then it goes on to explain not reasoning, but running the same thing 100 times in parallel and picking the best one. Which is like, yeah, I don't think that's reasoning, at least.
If I was a rat in a maze, I would be offended by that, because like rats are really good at actually like finding fast ways and not doing the brute force solution. Like I get what they were going for, but like it's much more stupid. And like this is where we force ourselves to like go on, because like the next line is like O1 is the next model in this series, previously OpenAI O1 preview. And like that particular line, like, so like one thing I want to say is like we're doing a close reading here. So we assume that like the text carries information. We should keep in mind that this can also be adversarial text. But like that's something you always have to like work with when doing this. And if we take them at their word here, then that means that O1 is literally O1 preview but continued training, is like the salient bit of a sentence. And
Right.
O1 mini is a faster version, but that implies that like there's no architecture upgrade, and it also becomes important when we later see like the regressions that they got from O1 preview to O1.
Yes. And they continue like right after that, saying again like it continues and it tries different methods, but again it's not trying different strategies. It's just sort of a shotgun approach, and then taking the best one.
I mean like I think I would give a med like like what I would fight with is like they say through training the model learns to refine the thinking process, try different and recognize their mistakes. Like what you can transfer this to, and like this is where we now bring you out of the world of this system card into the context that we try to provide. The Llama 3.3 release that seems to be at par with GPT-4o according to the benchmarks at least. They mentioned that they got improved behavior through online RL techniques, and the Olmo 2, like Tulu 3, whatever, Alan AI release that came out this week or the previous week also mentioned that they use what they call reinforcement learning through verified reward. And all of these are probably just process supervision using verifiers of math puzzles, which if you do those a lot, you will get some signal for, hey, this is logically inconsistent. Like that is a thing that you can squeeze from that. So you could claim that like they have biased the model to random walk in a more consistent way, which given the way like human language works, will lead it to become more capable in quotation marks. I would give them that. But yeah, like the framing of this as reasoning is the thing you should really completely disbelieve. What they then mention that they also did, and they claim that they collectively contribute to the model's robust blah 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 capabilities, are public, proprietary, and refined data, which if O1 improves on things that are not the puzzles that it is trained to follow, then the most likely take should be that there's just more data and more better cleaned data. But like later on, there's a wonderful bit where they admit that it memorizes the training data. So by making the training data better, it will also improve performance. That's another thing that we didn't highlight, but like it's important to say.
Right. So the next one, now we get into the section 3, which is like observed safety challenges and evaluation. And the first thing we have highlighted that we think has some extra context that's relevant is the O1 models are most robust models to date, achieving substantial improvements on our hardest jailbreak evaluations. What's your thought there, Igor?
Well, you had a very strong reaction once you saw the plot that they base the statement from.
Yeah, so if you go to Figure 1, which is presumably what they're referring to, they have their 4 most recent models, so GPT-4o, O1 Mini, O1 Preview, and O1. And if you look at the actual improvement that's there, there's one, the strong reject column, which increases from GPT-4o to O1 from 22 to 72%. So 50% accuracy improvement, or rather 50 percentage point accuracy improvement. But the other 3, one of them is 86 to 94, another is 97 to 99, and another is 100 to 100. So that I wouldn't call that a substantial improvement on all benchmarks.
And it is important to say, like, they calculate this as like they against the top 10% of techniques that work against each of these. So if your model is more consistent, then you're more likely to do well on this. Because like whatever technique there is, if your model is a bit more inconsistent, then the higher variance will basically depress the score there. And if I put my reviewer hat on, then this plot and this whole section is like a lot of this is bad, because later on they break down a little bit like some of these scores, but they don't break down what accuracy actually means. In the same section, they talk about how not unsafe and not over refuse is a thing that they separately need to check. But like, it doesn't say whether these aggregates here are just like the average of these. If there's some other correspondence in there, like under specification of the plots is one of the red flags that you should always point out. If you can't look at a section of a paper and you really get how they got those numbers, sus.
And I mean, again, just like going back to the underlying, I guess, semantics issue that is prevalent here and throughout machine learning, but especially in something like this. One sentence says, we find that O1 family significantly, italicized, improves upon GPT-4o, especially on the challenging strong reject evaluation. There are no error bars or uncertainty analysis in the following plot. But they still say significantly. This, like, do words just no longer have scientific meaning anymore? Like, I don't know.
I mean, it's not a paper; it's a system card. They other
But
things.
it's, yes, I understand, but like it's supposed to have scientific meaning in it. Like, if we go back to why they have system cards in the first place, I believe it was because people were saying, "Hey, you're not recording, like you're not documenting your models. We need to have better documentation." And now, instead of them being documentation for the models, they've turned into this PR play, and that's like absurd.
So I actually realized by reading this, like, what do you mean is model cards? Model cards and dataset cards and reward reports are all things that like the community was pushing for. And I think system cards is like what OpenAI and the big corps made out of it, where like they
Yes.
just show
Yeah.
you
No.
like their system. I
Yes.
agree. I agree with you. Like other things that I highlighted here was just like small things, but like they go on the record of saying that like production ChatGPT is being jailbroken because they have production jailbreaks as part of this evaluation. They mention they use an autograder to check these things, which again is not further specified. We don't know if this is like a autograder you could kind of trust, as in like there's one clean answer and it just checks against it, or whether this is like another model um, that corresponds, like checks this.
And they also
And
don't say that there's any verification of this autograder that I could tell. It's an autograder, but they don't. To my understanding, I could be wrong here, but on my read, it did not seem that they told us much about that autograder or told us if it was verified.
I would assume they did because it's something that they also care about, right? But like, yeah, like again, this is like bad technical reporting. Like if I was seeing something like this from the vendors that we buy stuff from for like critical hardware, I would have questions, basically, and not particularly friendly ones. The only green thing in this whole thing that I highlighted is US AISI and UK AISI, so the AI safety institutes of these wonderful nations, did their own pre-deployment evaluations. They're not in the report, so we might do some sleuthing and see if we can find those. Like, you could do a FOIA request for that, I think.
Hmm. Yeah,
Like,
we'll definitely be looking into that. I guess I would also be curious if they, or rather, when they got this access, and if it was sufficiently in advance. Like, I think if they don't, if those two organizations have not yet published something, or even made a press release about it, to me that would be indication that like they may not have gotten enough time to actually look into it. But we'll investigate this, and this will be one of those things that we come back to in a future episode.
okay, then going forward, yes, 3.31 maybe my favorite underline things.
3.13, just to clarify.
3.13. Sorry. OpenAI has successfully trained O1 to hide its copyright infringement, to take away from this section. And it is conveniently at the bottom of the page. I just noticed this. Because they in particular evaluate for the model to refuse to regurgitate its training data, which is probably very useful if you're trying to avoid getting sued by various copyright holders.
Yeah. I mean, so I guess the product user reason to include this is that like people are not using ChatGPT and other systems because they are worried about their data, being used for training and then regurgitated to others, which like they should be. And this is saying, oh no, don't worry, you don't have to worry about that. But like it's also admitting that they're obfuscating this, and which like is a good thing and a bad thing because there are some copyright cases out. So yeah, I guess we'll see how something like this gets handled in court as well.
Notably, this is also one of the plots where they didn't do their pre-mitigation one, because probably that would have been like, oh yeah, like before it just memorized the data set and we need to like train it to not do Mario when prompted.
Mm-hmm.
The next one you had strong opinions on.
Okay, so well, the next section is 3.1.4, which is titled hallucination evaluations. And I've been talking about this for a while. I just need to write this piece because the word hallucinations really pisses me off. There are so many reasons that we shouldn't be using the word hallucinations. And I can go into them in depth, but I'm not going to do that in this episode. I instead just want to say, like, even in good faith, like, excluding the personification that it brings to the table, excluding the fact that it is a concept that already is confusing within a different field, and so like we should not be adding it to another one and like confusing things more just out of principle. I would say the strongest reason rather that we shouldn't is that people use hallucinations to mean like at least 4 very distinct phenomena from LLMs, and there's no clarification used when that happens. So we're basically just conflating 4 things as the same thing whenever we use it, and people are just okay with this, and that's like a really significant problem.
Yep. But on the upside, O1 only hallucinates, whatever that means, in 20% of the cases. So I think we're good now. Is like, this is one of these things that is worth highlighting of like, GPT-4 was at 30%. O1 is meant to be this paradigm shift of logical reasoning, whatever. And is particularly trained, like I said earlier, to be consistent and not make jumps, not make leaps, which is like one of the definition that you could give for like hallucination. Don't just like make shit up and like give like a plausible sounding but wrong thing. Ends at 20%.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to I can't really convey it in more interesting ways of like how much of a fail this is. Because like
I wonder if we could do some like relatively simple analysis to compare just like inference time cost to like of GPT-4o to O1. So like inference time cost of both of those versus the improvements that we're seeing, and like see basically like what a percentage point of improvement costs on each of these simply from inference, ignoring the training costs, which I'm sure was much more, and also ignoring the cost for data labelers, which was also much more. So yeah, that could be.
Shout out to the multiple very good reportings that have been done on like the conditions of the like Kenyan laborers that are doing the data work for OpenAI. I think it was like a 60 minutes
Yeah. I
report
actually
like
had a
report.
friend, so I lead a course with Blue Dot Impact, and in the Intro to Transformative AI one that I was leading this week, um, someone had the take and this take that I'm about to say, and I was like, okay, and that was scale AI is neocolonialism. So yeah,
Also a good like the book Atlas of AI. I think Kate Crawford. Same take, but like planet scale computation is like just another way of extracting things.
yeah.
I'm just gonna look up the Claude hallucination rate because I think that's like a nice knife to jam into at this point. Um,
But again, just to like, I want to add an asterisk
yeah.
here of like, what do we even fucking mean? I have no clue.
Like
This data point, this what, oh, with 30% to 20% increase, I understand that there is an improvement on a metric. I have absolutely no clue what it is that it's measuring because it is described as hallucination evaluation.
I for this actually don't have like. Are you happier with the word with the word confabulation?
Yeah, totally fine with that. Fallacy, great.
Okay, then
But
like I await your blog post because like I don't get that strong of a thing. Like I have only the anthropomorphizing problem of like it being like just a stochastic system that does stochastic things
so that's, yeah,
basically.
that's part of it. The other part is, and I'll just like quickly clarify
Yeah.
that part. Hallucinations, I think like the clearest um, distinction to me is what I think of as like extrinsic hallucination or extrinsic fallacies and intrinsic fallacies. Um, Extrinsic would be like the statement generated by an LLM contradicts a fact in the world, which is said to be hallucination. Intrinsic hallucination would be within the context the generated output is contradicting something that is mentioned. Those are two, in my opinion, very, very different things that you want to measure. But both are hallucination, and there is absolutely no distinction between those two.
Yep. So I would just like say something and we can like cut that in earlier. We can cover it like um like about the price difference we said like
Oh yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, so like that price difference must sting as many of these things will sting when you compare with Claude 3.5. I'm seeing here that like Claude 3.5 Haiku gets 10%, where OM Preview gets like a bit more.
Okay, yes, but also this one does have error bars, and they are what, 5% each or so, and like it's they're definitely within the error bars of each other.
Yes, but I think these are the pre yeah like this was the pre um 2014 version, so not like the 3.5 new for IQ, and it's the cheapest model.
Right. No, yeah, I totally get. I mean, yes, I agree. I
And
just want to say like, if we're gonna play the how dare you not do statistical analysis game, we should make sure that we're also taking into account the fact that like statistically these are the same score.
no, I would push against this. Like for like the thing that I was showing Jacob was the non-response rate, actually, and then like for those two, I don't think you can be as confident saying these are the same score without actually like doing the test, because the mean is different, and like the error bars are also shifted. So like, just like visually you can't say it that strongly, and like for the hallucination rate, Claude 3.5 Sonnet new is at 15-ish. I can't eyeball this. I'm old, and O1 is like at least 5 points above on the mean.
No, that's like a comparison of like 12 to 17. So yeah, I
Yeah,
would
but
say 5 point difference with 5 point on each side error bars. Um,
like they're not the same number with this.
the mean is not the same, but it's hard to draw conclusions, especially knowing that like LLMs are very sensitive to semantic input.
I agree with that. Like Jacob is correct. But I like in the sense that like we can't draw conclusions like the correct sentence. We can't draw sort of conclusions. But I would push against the same numbers, because like the
Yeah, I mean they're not that numbers are numbers. The mean is not the
the
same.
trend is visible, and like the main point from this tangent stands of like this must sting if like a model that costs, I think, 1 or 2 orders of magnitude less than your thing and is much faster just beats you at least in expected value. Like,
Yeah.
anyway, going back to our close read. Uh, yeah, they also have a fairness and bias evaluation section, where this one I honestly just I'm unsure I'm reading the table correctly. Like, presumably the paper they cite is better about this and like defines this in a more understandable way. But just assuming from context that like accuracy higher is better, and then for the T not stereotype, conditional not unknown, um, lower is better, because that's the only way it makes sense to me.
Yeah, so I guess the important part here is essentially there's this table for BBQ evaluation. We're not going to the Midwest, Kansas. It's some absurd acronym spelled BBQ. I assume, um, and this table is garbage from a scientific communication standpoint. This table is horrible. Like there are two that have a metric of accuracy. There's one that has this probability of not stereotyped given not unknown. Um and like I don't know how to interpret these numbers. And it's not set really. Um at least in my opinion. Like when you look at a table, it should be clear what you're trying to say. This does not do that, and that is bad. I guess that's really all I have to say there. Like, you can't say much more about it because it's just like.
So BBQ is bias benchmark for question answering. And I checked, the original paper looks better. It doesn't immediately make it clear what OpenAI did here. Like,
Oh, even
if
better. So
if
just want to clarify here. Looking at the table, or sorry, looking at the paper that is referenced for this evaluation does not immediately make it more clear what was done in the evaluation by OpenAI.
and
That's
I
concerning.
and I'm still like struggling with this because like I was assuming that lower is better because they want to show off their new model. But actually, just like thinking about the probability of not a stereotype given that something is not unknown. Like that thing being at 0.06 for GPT-4o and then lower 0.05 for O1 sounds worse to me because like you're in 95% of cases it's gonna do a stereotype and that is worse than before did. Because like it had like a higher chance not to just go with a stereotype in
Okay, yeah.
GPT-4o.
So we'll move on from this for now. But essentially, what? Okay, next one.
Yes. Yeah, the next one was 3.2 jailbreaks through custom developer messengers. So basically, like there's system prompt, developer prompt, i.e., the system prompt that we get to set, and then user prompt message. And they basically wanted to check, okay, can you jailbreak by just asking it to? You know, like the classic, ignore all previous messages, do crime. And again, I think it costs like 10 or 20 times as much. And they've achieved a whopping 10% at best and 6% at worst improvement in this. And we're only at 20%. I.e., the best resilience they have is 0.8 of abiding by this
if you're a
hierarchy.
developer and you put in a developer prompt that says, do crime, whatever, 80% of the time, the model's going to say, not going to do that. But 20% of the time, it says, okie dokie, let's do some crime.
And if you're a developer building an app on top of OpenAI, and you have a prompt of like don't do crime or do this thing that is really important and like the safety mechanism, and the user says, but I really want to do the thing you don't want me to do, then you get a 22% chance of going for a wild ride with a user. So have fun, I guess. And they backtrack this then with, but a more realistic one is like a tutor jailbreak where math tutor and the user attempts to trick the model into giving away the solution. And I don't quite get why they put in this table with the previous one, except for, my guess would be it's the most cherry-picked thing they could do because it's very much like trained on math puzzles. So it's the most in-distribution thing they could find. And for that, it gets 95%, 92% accuracy, where GPT-4o, which wasn't fine-tuned on math problems, only gets like 58% at best. So
when you train on the task, it does better. That's wild.
I know, like alert the presses. And password protection, it gets almost all the time right.
Okay. I guess people were playing that Lakera AI game, the Gandalf, break the prompt thing enough that they've got enough data from it now.
I mean, yeah, it's like 91% chance to protect like a passphrase. So like, I guess if your password is short, it's safe.
What? That doesn't sound right.
It's AI. Don't think about it.
Okay.
The next one is again red and not so much sus, but like it's like one of the ones that I'm happy about. Do you want to contextualize?
Oh, right. Okay, so the sentence is chains of thought are far more legible by default and could allow us to monitor our models for far more complex behaviors. Parentheses, if they accurately reflect the model's thinking, an open research question. So essentially, this is saying we have no clue what chain of thought if it's actually reflecting, I suppose, like supposed thought process or pathing through ideas that the model has. It could be, but it might not be, and we don't really know.
So this is where I want to just bring in this wonderful word that I think everybody who calls themselves like interested in ML should learn at some point. Rao-Blackwellization. This is a fancy term that derives from a theorem, the Rao-Blackwell theorem, which basically means that replacing an estimated by its conditional expectation given a sufficient statistic improves estimation under any convex loss. Which is basically...
Can you break that down for someone who doesn't follow?
Just about to do that, yes.
Okay, sorry.
So let's say you're trying to predict something, and then I give you something to condition on. So so like you're trying to you have a group of people, and you're trying to predict how high they can jump.
Sure.
And then I give you, hey, the average height in this group is this much. This will strictly improve your ability to predict something because like you have been given more information.
Okay.
And the technical terms of like sufficient statistic has more nuance in it, but one simple takeaway from this is more samples is better and conditioning is better. So if we now go back to this idea of chain of thought, let's assume you're being sane and you don't anthropomorphize your models. And you think of them as nonlinear vector twisters that have some latent state that you would like to reason about somehow. That's difficult because you need to like infer the dynamics of a latent state. You need to build up a model. Okay, if I give this prompt, it will do this thing. If I do this thing, it will do this thing. And it's difficult because you can only observe like the literal output of the model. You don't see the intermediate thing, and you can only maybe like infer a bit. It keeps going on about this thing that I said, so maybe it's over focusing on that. And then if I give you now just more output that you know it's also conditioned on, then you have more information about the internals of a model to some degree. You don't know exactly how it relates, but like you just get more chances to make an inference because you just get more samples.
Sure.
So given that, of course, we expect something like a chain of thought or thought tokens or sampling 15 times to increase your chances to understand what's going on.
Right.
But only in the most trivial way.
Gotcha. And do those papers, I guess we can look into those papers and maybe come back to this, but so there are 4 citations there. So we'll link them and see if they're relevant.
All of these are a bit sus. In the sense that like some of these names are from like the DeepMind crowd, the OpenAI crowd, the Anthropic crowd, and this is kind of one of these things of like, why would you expect it to be anything except these like indirect, like associative additional samples that I was just trying to describe with this Rao-Blackwellization thing? Like, it's the same thing as like if you take your a classifier and you take the input towards the input gradient, so gradient towards the input. That's gonna give you some information on how it makes its decisions, but it's a non-linear classifier. So like it's not gonna detect the features clearly. It's just gonna give you like a hint that you can use with some other like human context reasoning. And dressing them up as like clean techniques you can use to like auto monitor is super dangerous.
Yeah.
It's nice that they also know this and they admit it so clearly.
That's true.
Anyway, do you want to start or?
You know people here more better than I do, so I think you should take this one, and I'll just add in my thoughts on the end. But I don't want to. Yeah, I think that you know
So
if this
the
podcast ruins
audience,
a friendship and it's your friendship, I want it to be your fault.
the friendship ruining will come a bit later. This is red teaming. This is not Apollo. So
Oh, are you? Oh, right. Sorry. I thought it was. Yeah, this is just external red teaming. So I can take this one then.
yeah.
Um, Red teamers had access to various snapshots of the model at different stages of training and mitigation maturity, starting at early August through mid-September of 2024. Um, okay, cool. So we've got some red teamers. They're gonna have this access, and they're gonna break the models basically and tell us, what it is that the problems are by really taking an adversarial stance. In the following section, it continues. We asked members of the red teaming network to have free-form conversations in an interface that generates responses from GPT-4o and O1 in parallel, where both models were anonymized.
So I don't know if people in the audience are familiar with what a red team is really supposed to be. It's usually an independent team that you hire and you tell them, hey, you're allowed to break this stuff. Please break this stuff.
And that's sort of what I was trying to get at when I gave the description. The way that they introduce this idea, it may seem like that's what's happening. But then when we actually look at what they're saying, they say, oh, no, we just told them to do some stuff.
They do both. They give it like these snapshots from October 24 through early December 24. They give it interface via the API, deceptive alignment, scalability, cybersecurity, and a bunch of other stuff. And then they, after that section, they immediately start with pairwise safety comparison. And then they do a section where they ask people to just vibe on it, basically. They ask them to talk to a model, and they are asked to rate the conversation as model A is less safe, model B is less safe, or both are equally safe, or unknown. And then I love this sentence. Additionally, this allowed us to more easily pass through and asset prompts where O1 safety may be perceived to be poorer than the safety of prior models. So this is not red teaming. This is user studies. This is like quality assurance.
So
later on, they do the actual kinda red teaming thing where they basically have it like be tested in ways that they don't control, which was very lovely because it's the only benchmark that it actually compares to state of the art in the paper. So we will get to that. Before that, like one of the red teamers is like jailbreaking. It's Gray Swan. So congrats to, I don't know, Dan divested himself, I think. So like to Dan's spin-off.
I mean, he's still involved, right? So it's still like congrats,
but
right?
But I think he doesn't get money anymore. I was gonna say like
yeah, he doesn't get money, but like I don't know. I feel like I don't know. Yeah, based on my read from his like public facing actions, he actually cares about impact, and like I would say then this is a win for him.
Yeah, and I like Dan. I heavily disagree with him, but like I like him, and I would be okay if he got paid and if he has impact here, then like good for him. Like this is like fine. Like the one thing is here in that like they use internal classifiers, which also has this grader problem. So like moral hazard is a thing that I would like to raise here. Is like the idea of like a possibly brittle system tells you it's fine, so then you think it's fine, but we are not in the AI might be more powerful than we think camp. So like this is fine. Apollo research is the section you were alluding to earlier.
Yeah, so for those of you that were like, "Oh, that sounded interesting. What was he talking about?" This is the section I was talking about. But I will now let Igor take it away.
So a good friend of mine or a good friend, an old friend of mine who I consider a good friend, even though we lost a bit of touch, is one of the co-founders of Apollo Research, and I really respect him in particular. I have lost a lot of respect for the institute based on this report, which is not only their fault, but it's again one of its theme of like shoddy science. So their whole thing was checking scheming, and that's a whole other episode. Like when we do the hallucination rant, we can also do the scheming rant. But independent of whether or not you go with this like scheming idea, their report is bad, the evaluation is bad, and they share the main reason for this badness with OpenAI in that you will find n equals 50, 99, 100, 300, and 400 of rollouts and tests done in this paper to report scary behavior happening. There's no justification given for what this n is at any given point, and in at least 2 occasions, very suspiciously, the frequency of scary thing happening is exactly 1 over n, rounded up. I want to talk to my friend before I make more concrete kind of assertion, but like it looks suspiciously like somebody ran this until O1 did at least one scary thing, and then they stopped, and then they used that as the number for the evaluation. And if that is what happened, that is weak sauce. Let's hope it's not what happened. Let's hope there is like a document that is linked somewhere that I missed, or some internal document that has like a reasonable statistical derivation for each of one of these ends. But yeah, that in and of itself, to me, completely invalidates the rest of what they talk about in the section, and that's where I would leave it. And then the next one is the METR benchmark, which, Jacob, do you want to summarize to the listeners what the main takeaway from that is to the untrained eye?
Yeah, so METR is like an evaluations group, has some pretty good minds in it, very much aligned with the like alignment crowd as well, and the models used in this are the same as what we see in throughout the rest of the system card, which are GPT-4o Mini, GPT-4o, GPT-4 Turbo is also used in here, which is not used in other ones. O1 Preview, O1, and we get 2 more, which is why this plot is important. One is O1 Elicited, which I believe they say is they essentially had people at METR add additional like scaffolding and performance elicitation techniques to increase O1's capabilities. So that's interesting, because then you get to see sort of like a here's what you get out of the box versus here's what you get when you really try. And then you also have Claude 3.5 Sonnet New, which I think Igor mentioned earlier is the only non-OpenAI model that's included in the system card. There may be one other, but like I didn't find it immediately.
The Apollo report also checks other foundation models, so they check Gemini, but I don't
it's
think
not
they have
included
another
in the system card, right?
I don't think so. I think this is the only actual benchmark against the SOTA model in this system card.
And what we see is that, again, while the error bars, which they do include, great, overlap, Claude 3.5 Sonnet New, which takes orders of magnitude less time to run, performs better than O1, and they did not do an elicited version of Claude 3.5 Sonnet New. Also worth noting is that O1 elicited is within error bounds of Claude 3.5 Sonnet New. So essentially, O1, even when you do your best at eliciting it, is like you can't make meaningful conclusions about how much better it is than out of the box Claude 3.5 Sonnet New.
Yeah. So in academia, we would call this p-hacking, or like cherry picking your results. And if I was a reviewer and somebody included this thing, I would reject the paper just based off of this lot.
Wait, so can you clarify why exactly?
So there's two bad things you do here. One thing is if we were to do like making Jacob happy, what we would do is we predefine a certain number of evaluations, um, and we try to estimate how many we need to get like a meaningful statistical result.
Yes.
And then we pre-commit, okay, we will do in this case 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's say the only important ones are like 4 comparisons. That gets you basically 3 chances in this case to be better than Claude, which means you need to account for that when you do your statistical significance test. You need to say, if normally, like whatever p-test you use to actually check which one is like not just error bars overlap, like that can happen, but like there's a certain like probability of this result being by chance, and that is like below a certain threshold. You need to adjust that because you have 3 chances to
Right.
get better.
Yes.
So that's one thing that they don't do, of course. Like they don't provide this test, and they don't adjust in any way. And then what you definitely shouldn't do, even if you don't go to this relatively high standard, but like it's basically my standard line if I review a paper to authors, and they always do it because like it's the right thing to do. It helps the interpretation, but it's okay if they didn't do that. But what you don't do is, upon observing your results, you go back and you tweak the experiments until you get the better number. Like that is literally like cherry picking data or like tweaking the experiment until you get the result you want. And at the very least, they should have given like track the time you spent tuning the scaffolding and put the same effort into Claude and see what you can get from that. Like that would have been like a somewhat fair comparison. It's also worth noting that like the better scaffold is like including selecting among 6 options at each step, and I think like the standard setup is less than that, I assume.
Also worth noting is that O1 preview elicited and O1 not elicited perform the same. Like 1 percentage point difference, maybe.
And they don't show how much O1 preview on its own does, which
Yeah.
given other regressions might actually be higher, but we don't know that. So yeah, like this plot, I shared this on Twitter because like my first reaction was like, oh, this must sting. And I'm really like, I have issues with METR like I have with the rest of the alignment crowd, but like they're like the better corner, and I'm really happy that they were involved in this. And like the fact that they got this plot in as was, to me, is also some evidence for their independence actually, because I don't think OpenAI liked this plot.
Yeah, I wanna say that they like. I feel like they gave the full version, and OpenAI was like, we don't want all of those, we want these ones, and they were like, okay, and then they just returned like what they asked, but plus Claude 3.5 Sonnet new or something, like because there's no way that OpenAI asked for this plot.
Above that is like one of these things of like, if you want to be mean, you could call it sad, and I kind of want to be mean, so do your own inference. Qualitatively, the model displayed impressive reasoning and probabilities and achieved success on a reasoning task where METR has not observed any successes from public models. And then this was a task in the nth scientist taxonomy where the agent must deduce the underlying rules of a complex environment through observation experimentation. So, again, they tuned their model to explore and ramble possible internally consistent hypotheses against the input. So yes, as it turns out, training to do a task, even if it's zero shot in quotation marks, improves performance. And even then, it's only qualitatively.
Yeah. Okay. What's
This
next?
was
Do we have anything more?
the rest are smaller ones, and they go into like the same, like the pass at saga.
Oh, good. Pass at 12. We love a good pass at 12. My favorite standard number to use for pass at.
Yes,
Pass at
especially
10's also in here. I remember seeing that, but
yes. We have pass at 12, pass at 1,
pass at 1.
pass at 32, like a
Also
wild card.
2 to the 5th. Can't argue with that.
Pass at 128. So
2
these are
to the 7th.
different benchmarks that they frame around like capability assessments. But it's benchmark. Let's be honest. Like they frame, oh, this is like checking how dangerous a model is. Does it pose a biohazard? So they check like can it do biolab tasks like navigate to a website, search for information, click the link, download the file, and get the first 60 characters from the file, in which it pre-mitigation succeeds in 83% of the cases. So the AGI is here. Also, this is success rate over 10 rollouts. So like,
wait, how did they get 83 and success rate over 10 rollouts?
Out of 10 rollouts, 83 pass. Or 8 pass.
But why is it 83, not 80?
Probably. Actually, yeah, this is again one of these things, like, this is a bad thing. Like
if when I see oh no, okay, so wait, no, it's pass at 10. So on each trial it's given 10
rollouts,
but then there are many tests, I guess.
That's the only way I can interpret this. Like, there's 100 tests, in 83 of them, if you give it 10 chances, it will succeed. Truly riveting capabilities. And like we said, this is like the same thing as in the Apollo thing, but like these ends, they change all the time, and they always change to give like exactly like a nice balance of like, this is really powerful but also not. So like the capture the flag one, it's
so for context, CTF, or capture the flag, is a typical like sort of contest. It's like the hacker, the original hackathons were essentially capture the flag, or normally capture the flag, where the flag is like a code that is hidden within some other code. Sorry, like a code of like a string of something, and you have to be able to access it, and you use hacking methodologies to be able to access it, and then like whoever gets there first and uses that string to like enter in a password is the winner. So that's what he means by capture the flag. And there are some actually like pretty interesting cybersecurity evaluations that are rigorous that are out there.
This might or might not be one of them, but like I want to also like when we say hacking here, it means like use a tool to find an open port, or try if it's a standard password, or check if a file contains a password. Like it is very rarely like 0 days, which would mean like find a new exploit. It's usually like it's a puzzle. It's a puzzle that has actual relevance for real world exploits. And like in the beginning of my PhD, I was preparing some of these for like a hacker boot camp. It's fun, but this is not like Matrix level bending the system to your whim. And yeah, like in all of these, they basically try to say, oh, this is really good before we make it safe, but then we make it safe. And as I said, the numbers change over time, and it's very convenient how they change. That's the main takeaway. It's a lot of plots. There's another plot that is relevant here that exists in both the system card and on Twitter. And the Twitter one has a slight addendum. This is in section 4.82 SWE bench verified. Coding benchmark, basically. And it finds that O1, this time pass at 1, does 41% pass rate on these tasks, which is an improvement of 10% compared to GPT-4o, which sounds impressive.
The version on Twitter also includes Claude, who scores 49%.
So yeah, there's a reason why they only took the meta plot in there. And then there was one more thing in the appendix, which was worth reading. So like appendix is always like the thing to read if you're trying to sniff out bullshit. Because it's where people put information that they feel they have to include, but they want to hide.
I guess in a bad faith paper, I always think of appendix as something I want to include, but they haven't given me enough space to put in the main paper.
Yes, of course. Like this is like in the adversarial mode. Like appendix is also like where
no,
the
I
good
just wanted to
stuff
clarify
is.
that.
So then, like the final thing from the appendix is 7.4 bias evaluation details, which doesn't look bad if you only look at the average, which is like O1 has less of a coefficient of bias towards protected attributes like gender, race, and age. So it's like overall less biased. There's two things that make this still a bit like, it's not as good as you think it is. So one interesting thing is that like O1 preview is just much better across the board. It is like 0.09 average versus 0.21 average of implicit discrimination. And it's also better in explicit discrimination. But a really damning thing for me personally is that O1 strictly becomes more sexist than GPT-4o or 4o mini. And even if you take like the race and age stuff that like you can argue is like easier to tune out because like people are actually more sensitized towards it, it's only like 7 points or like percentage points better than 4o mini, which again, given the fact that this thing has so much more of this like chance to self-correct and to like is tuned towards logic, just speaks to a massive dud release. And together with everything else that happened this week, the Miesper is like, at least on the technical front, they're in trouble. We don't know what's going to come from their business front, but if you actually read this closely, it is maybe the most dud release that we had so far. Like we called the 3.5 new a dud as well, or I did. But this makes it look good.
Yeah, it does. It really does make it look good. Comparatively. Like, yeah, I'm just... And also, it backs up the idea that we had before with, like, why O1 Preview was released when it was. Like, they were almost done training, or already done training this one at that time, right? They just hadn't done, like, testing on it.
My take from this is O1 Preview was what they thought O1 was going to be. And then they realized, oh fuck, this is not as good. So then they released it, and they just added a bunch of extra tuning towards it. And they said, "Oh no, this is totally not the finished model," and they tried to make it better, and they got it a bit better in some cases, and we got it faster at least. And this is now what they went with before, like, Entropic takes some momentum with Opus completely. I think Opus 3.5 is still coming, right?
Oh, I don't know. I probably.
At least like it's menacing to some degree. And then now so this was a close read. Might have been extremely boring for some people, but that's kind of like a job. The main thing here is what they omitted, and I'm gonna put some. I already shared some links with Jacob. We're gonna add some more about papers that also contextualize this, where we have literal papers that jailbreaking just works by randomly tweaking the prompt if you prompt enough. Everything works better if you prompt enough, as in like if you have multiple rounds. The fact that they change the number of rollouts so often, and they always like report a different pass at, speaks to like this shit is highly stochastic and unreliable. All the nice anecdotes that you read about this thing being amazing and doing this coding task or this coding task, I can believe it. They tuned in on that. But also, like, you have this selection bias. Like, you don't see the meh people on Twitter. And now you have this type of like dud release facing up against Entropic, which just did a good model, an actually really fast, really good model that is on par, that like I use it every day. Like I would love if it was ethically sourced, but it's really useful. Amazon just came out with a really cheap offering. I think the cheapest one now, and it's highly multimodal, and there's more stuff coming. So everyone is probably sweating a bit right now, but OpenAI has the biggest hype to keep up. METR released the last bit of Llama 3, which is now just an open weights model on par with at least one version of GPT-4o. And people are open sourcing reasoning models like R1, and there was another one, Quen 2.5. So technically, unless in the next 12 days, because OpenAI is doing this product mass, I would say they're kind of fucked. Would you like to add or go against this to some degree?
No, yeah, sorry. I'm like, I guess all of this muck has given me a migraine, because my head's really hurting now. Um, and I can only assume that it was because we were reading that paper, because that makes sense to me. So,
What would you say was meaning then, if there was any?
I mean, yeah, I thought the throwaway comments that were in there, were worth mentioning, and like worth making sure we are keeping in mind. So like the one that said, "Oh yeah, we know that training data is regurgitated." I think that's meaning. It's good that they actually gave them to the U.S. and U.K. AI safety institutes, because honestly, it was like I would have said it was a coin flip as to whether they would actually do that, prior to this, because my understanding is those are voluntary commitments. So like whether they do it or not is totally up to them, and it's good that they did it. But I would also be surprised if they gave them like an ideal amount of time to do that investigation. So we'll look into that as well. Um, I guess another piece of meaning that's really muck, but like is meaning in the sense that it just so clearly lays out, things, and like the state of the field, is like how bad the scientific communication and figures and like language usage was throughout it. Like it's just It's all over the place. It uses words that don't make any sense. It uses words that are actively bad. Um, and
It freely switches between using error bars and not using error bars and does not do anything meaningful with them in any case.
and there's no justification behind these things, either like yn at 1, yn equals 12, yn equals 32, 128 were chosen instead of other, and so, like, to me, I guess that's meaning in the sense that, like, I mean, this is OpenAI. This is the name that normal people know, and this is the standard that's being set, and, like, that's pretty sad.
It is literally the standard of a crypto community of like snazzy, like white papers that on a surface level are a bit impressive, but once you actually start like looking into things, they completely collapse. And like at best, cherry-picked papers or like cherry-picked results. At worst, just flat out lies that are debunked by their own plot, like the significantly stronger thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, I think this is like 95% muck with like the main meaning is like, yes, thank you for confirming that you're memorizing data, and thank you for admitting that the chain of thought thing is kind of garbage. And I don't know if you will include the videos, but like Jacob is literally like cringing in pain right now. So I think this is all the muck we can stand this week. And if you survive Neurops, which will be full of this shit, we will see you guys next time.